Through the chair, you're live on HCAM TV.
All right, thanks, Bob. And we have 5 of us here. So we'll go ahead and get started. This is Gary Trindle. I hereby call our September 13th, 2021 Hopkinton Planning Board meeting to order. Let me quickly read through our script. This opening meeting of the Hopkinton Planning Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with the recently signed an act extending certain COVID measures adopted during the state of emergency. This act includes an extension until April 1st, 2022 of the remote meeting provisions of his March 12th, 2020 executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. This law has 2 major parts. First, the new law allows public bodies to continue providing live, adequate alternative means of public access to the deliberations of the public body, instead of holding meetings in a public place that is open and physically accessible to the public. Adequate alternative means may include, without limitation, providing public access through telephone, internet, or satellite-enabled audio or video conferencing, or any other technology that enables the public to clearly follow the proceedings of the public body in real time. Second, the new law authorizes all members of a public body to continue participating in meetings remotely. The open meeting law's requirement that a quorum of the body and the chair be physically present at the meeting locations remains suspended. For this meeting, the planning board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's web meeting calendar and the board's agenda identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast by HCAM through one or many of its channels or platforms. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website via the web meeting calendar, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda, unless I note otherwise. We'll shortly turn to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will invite board members to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name and address before speaking. If members wish to engage in dialogue with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Not every item will feature public comment, but for those that do, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment. Once the chair has, I'll call each person by name, and you'll have 3 minutes for any comments. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Lastly, sorry, one last thing. I just realized I just missed that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees and all of the attendees are participating by video conference. So please make sure not to unintentionally screen share your computer. So really quickly, let's go through our roll call. So members, when I state your name, please respond in the affirmative. Start with Mary Larson Marlowe.
Mary Larson Marlowe, here.
Rob Benson.
Rob Benson, here.
Jane Moran.
Jane Moran, present.
Dave Paul.
Dave Paul, here.
Deb Feinbrook.
Deborah Feinbrook, here.
Sundar Sivarman.
Sundar Sivarman, present.
Shahidul Manan.
Shahidul Manan, present.
And I know that Fran DeYoung is not going to be on tonight. And Gary Trindle, of course, is here. Staff, when I call your name, please respond to the affirmative. In the affirmative, Mr. Gelsich.
John Gelsich, here.
Miss Pemberton.
Stephanie Pemberton, present.
And Mr. Paradis.
Phil Paradis from Beta, present.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Really quickly, I'm just going to summarize our agenda for this evening and just hit on a couple of things. We do have a reasonable number of administrative items. I am going to cover a couple of those first. That would be the certificate of release of performance guarantee for Hayden Woods, as well as the extension of the solar special permit for Wood Street, just given applicants. The other stuff is more internal, so we can go ahead and discuss that at the end. we'll vote shortly after we open it, but the Turkey Ridge Estates, formerly known as Deer Ridge Estates, has requested a continuation. So we'll go ahead and, assuming we'll continue, but we'll take a vote on that. And then we have a new public hearing for 17 Main Street, minor site plan review. We talked about this briefly previously. I think that team is ready to go. And then also just wanted to share one other thing that's not on the agenda here, but Deb Feinbrook has submitted her resignation from the planning board. And Deb, we're certainly first and foremost grateful for your service, not just on the planning board, but other towns you've been a part of. Deb has graciously agreed to resign after the September 27th meeting, which I think is also great because it gives us a little bit more time, not only to see through the hearings that we already have, but to initiate the process for her replacement, which will be via a joint select board planning board meeting. So Deb, I don't know, you want to say something really quick? I don't know if you do or not.
It's been a pleasure. It probably calls for a time to go to TJ's at some point where we can get together and we can have fun and chat with everyone. It's really been a pleasure getting to know every individual, and it's sad. There's a bit of sadness involved, but it's onto different types of things, different adventures up in Maine. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Well said, Deb, and we'll definitely we'll get something planned also for we never did anything to celebrate Muriel's time on the planning board either, so we can probably combine those into one event. So
We'll miss you, Deb.
Yeah, I'll miss you guys too. I might pop in now and again though.
That's good.
for one or two meetings, and then you'll be like, that was fun.
And what did she say?
So I am going to go ahead and let's go ahead and open the public hearings, and then we can continue we can vote on continuing the Turkey Ridge Estates project. So I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearings for Turkey Ridge Estates and for 17 Main Street.
So moved. Mary Larson Marlowe.
Seconded, Sundar Sivaraman.
All right, thank you both. Assuming no further discussion, we'll vote on open these hearings. Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Shahadul?
Hayden Manan, yes.
And Gary Trendle is a yes. As I mentioned, Turkey Ridge Estates has requested a continuance. I think they realize they still have some things to work through with Beta. I very much appreciate their willingness to continue, but I think, John, they wanted to continue to the 27th. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And quickly looking at our schedule, and September 27th looks okay. So I'll entertain a motion to continue the Turkey Ridge Estates hearing to September 27th. And I think we're probably okay in the decision, right, John?
Yes, we would have to, if it gets continued one more meeting, I believe we'd have to continue the decision. But if there's a decision rendered at the 27th, we should be okay.
Okay.
Mary Larson Marlowe, so moved.
Hayden Manan, second.
All right, thank you both. Assuming no further discussion, we will vote. Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Shahadul?
Hayden Manan, yes.
And Gary Trendle is a yes. Okay, let's go to administrative item B. Vote to execute Exhibit B, certificate of release of performance guarantee for Hayden Woods. John, do you want to just give us a quick recap of what we're looking at here and how we move forward on this one?
Yeah, so for Hayden Woods, the board voted back in 2019 to release all of the performance guarantee funds. The Exhibit B is a form that is sometimes filled out, sometimes not, that acknowledges that all the funds have been released. There is somebody who is looking to buy a property in Hayden Woods, and as part of their due diligence, they are requesting that the planning board fill out the Exhibit B. So it's kind of just a formality at this point, since everything's already been accomplished, and now we're just voting to execute Exhibit B in line with the decision of 2019.
And just to clarify, the bond has already been released.
Correct.
So this is literally just an administrative formality.
Correct.
All right, any questions or comments from the board? And seeing none, I will entertain a motion. Do we need a motion on this, John?
Yeah, you need a vote to execute the exhibit.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to execute Exhibit B for the Hayden Woods, aka Davenport Village, which would confirm the planning board's vote on May 13th, 2019.
Mary Larson Marlowe, so moved.
Sundar Sevaraman, seconded.
Thank you both. Assuming no further discussion, I think we can go ahead and take a vote. Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Dave?
Hey, Paul, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sevaraman, yes.
Shahadul?
Shahidul Manan, yes.
And Gary Trindle is a yes.
So through the chair,
Yes, sir.
one comment on this.
Mhm.
It needs a signature of 5 board members. So if 5 board members can come tomorrow to the office and sign that, that would be great. Tomorrow is our long day. I will be there until 6:15-ish.
Okay.
You're just making excuses to see us, John.
I
That's
like
fine.
seeing you guys.
We like-
I like seeing
we
you
like to
guys. What
see
can I
you.
say?
We like to see you.
This time I'll bring some candy, John.
Okay, the other one that we wanted to move through quickly here is the extension of the solar special permit for Wood Street. So again, I'll look to you, John. Do you want to just summarize why this is on our agenda this evening?
Yes, and I think Brandon Smith is also here, so he can, from Borrego, he can discuss it a little bit further. But so this is a special permit for solar that was issued for the Wood Street area off of Mechanic Street. The 2 years is set to expire in November, and they're looking for a 1-year extension as there's been delays in the processing of their interconnection application. So they're just looking for an extra year so that they can get through that process and then actually build, because I don't believe they can really do much while they're waiting that application to be processed.
Yep.
John, is that an Eversource delay?
Hi, this is Brandon Smith from Borrego.
Hi, Brandon.
Hi. Yeah, and John pretty much summarized there. That is correct. That it was caught up. You might have had other projects you heard where certain distributed generation solar projects got caught up in a transmission level study, basically because of rising kind of renewable penetration into the electrical grid. So a lot of projects were caught up in this study and couldn't proceed until that was, kind of finalized. So we weren't anticipating that sort of delay. And as John mentioned, we really can't construct the project until that's finalized. And really, probably the bigger thing is we can't finance a project that, it has that large unknown outstanding. So that's the reason for the request. That's coming to a close very shortly. We anticipate to be able to close out financing by the end of the year and start construction next year. But we're obviously coming up on the end of that 2-year special permit timeline. So that's the reason for the request.
All right, thanks, Brandon. Any questions from the board? All right, don't see any questions. And while this is not a public hearing, I'll just check and see if there's any questions from the public. All right.
Sorry, through the chair, Gary,
Yes, go
I
ahead,
was
John.
unmuted, sorry. A quick question. Do we, I think our expert, in-house expert, John, could probably enlighten us. Is there any change within this time in the perimeter or around that might have potential impact on extension? Are we aware of anything since the time has been a couple of years?
I don't know if I fully understand the question. There's really nothing that's changed. It would still be subject to the zoning bylaw that it was approved under. So the newly approved bylaw, it would not be subject to, but that was kind of always known. Even if it was built a year ago, it would have been subject to that bylaw. So nothing changes in that regard. Extending the special permit wouldn't change anything. It would still be the same approved permit that was approved back 2 years ago.
Thank you. Yeah, just wanted to understand. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, Gary, this is Rob. One question. Just so I understand, we typically have these time limits in our bylaws to prevent things running just unimpeded for out there forever. I guess what I understand the situation, but as a board, how often do we? I just don't have any frame of reference of how often we grant an extension for something like this.
So I can tell you, in my experience, fairly rarely. I have seen special permits expire, not related to solar, but just one person's opinion. I also look at the last year and a half. There's been a lot of extraordinary circumstances that I don't think are necessarily any fault of an applicant, and just kind of knowing how backed up everything is. To me, I don't see this request as unreasonable. And again, back just to your original question, I'm trying to think if maybe that's a question for Dave. If Dave's been on the board, I think longer than maybe all of us here, Dave. I can't recall any off the top of my head.
Yeah, no, usually they flow smoothly, but as we saw with the other solar farm, once in a while we do see a weird thing where they just wanted to get the application in and not really do anything with it right away, just as a placeholder. But for the most part, they come before us, so they're on schedule, they get completed. So it is the exception that it expires, in my experience.
And just one more point to add too. I think while there's certainly been a lot of tension around many of these commercial solar projects that we've seen, I think this one was one of the smoother ones. The site has largely been previously cleared. So, just for anybody that wasn't around for this hearing, again, just one person's opinion, but I think this is one of those sites that actually made, even from a town perspective, seemed to make good sense for commercial solar. All right. If there aren't any other questions, then I will entertain a motion to extend the solar special permit for, let's make sure I get this right, just looking for an official name here. What do we have beyond Wood Street, John?
You actually want the name of the...
Well, I guess I just figured the motion, I should probably reference the name of the name that the special permit was filed under.
Yeah, let me pull it up.
I feel like it was Mechanic Street.
Yeah, it is 0
On
Wood
Water?
Street and 5 Mechanic Street. The applicant is Brandon Smith, Borrego Solar Systems, 55 Technology Drive, Lowell, Massachusetts, and the owner is John H. and Pamela J. Larder, 1 Mechanic Street, Hopkinton, Massachusetts.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to extend the solar special permit for 0 Wood Street / 5 Mechanic Street by 1 year to November 20, or excuse me, by 1 year from its expiration date to November 25th, 2022.
Through the
So-
chair, that is a typo. The solar special permit was approved December 27th, 2019.
Sorry, December
27th, 2000.
27th.
2019.
Okay, so I'll try one more time. I'll entertain a motion to extend the solar special permit for 0 Wood Street, 5 Mechanic Street to December 27th, 2022.
So moved.
Mary Larson Marlowe, so moved.
Second.
All right,
Okay.
Mary with the motion, Dave with the second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Simaraman, yes.
Shahadul?
Manan, yes.
And Gary Trendle is a yes. So, thanks, Brandon.
Thank you.
Calling in.
Appreciate the
Yeah.
time. Have a good night.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Thanks for the update.
Okay. Let's move to the new public hearing for 17 Main Street. Tom Carey, DBA doing business as Main and Church Realty. I see Tom is on. Tom, is there anybody else that we should unmute here?
I think Scott Richardson is on with me and Dave Marquidon.
All right. Good evening, gentlemen. Somebody snapping their fingers at me? Get going.
Oh, I'm not a good Zoom. I'm not an experienced Zoom guy. When my son is here as my assistant, you got to understand.
No worries.
I live
No
in a
worries.
primitive world.
Well, so let's go ahead and start with this. And Tom, I don't know if it's you or somebody else from your team, but we'd love to hear a brief project introduction from you or your team.
Okay, I'll go first and then maybe Scott can pick it up. I've owned that building at 17 Main since 2011. And I call myself an amateur landlord. It's not my full-time occupation. I own some other buildings in the historic district, most notably probably that you know of, the Manor House, which is on the town seal, that brick colonial at 1 Main Street and 2 Hayden Road. I try to keep the properties up the best I can. I'm not trying to get rich, as the landlord, but I just try to keep them full and try to keep everybody happy to the best that I can. That all said, we had an unfortunate fire just about a year ago, and it, damaged the front portion of the building quite dramatically. And understanding that the damage was quite significant and understanding that the back addition on the building really, it wasn't good office space and that there's a need for some affordable housing in town, we decided to basically come up with the program that we did. And Scott, drew up some architectural drawings, and that's basically my synopsis. Can you take it from there, Scott?
Tom, I don't see Scott on here. Unless he's got a different name popping up.
He's the Gorman Richard architect guy.
Yep.
Maybe they
I see Mr.
didn't
Markedon.
anticipate-
Mr. Markedon is on.
Okay.
This is Dave Marquardt. While we're waiting for Scott to attend, I can talk about the site if that, we can sort of keep moving forward here.
Go ahead, Dave.
Good evening. So as Tom explained, the fire about a year or so ago. So Tom's property has 3 existing buildings on it. Building number 17 Main, the garage right behind the existing 17, and another building on number 6 Church Street. So Tom owns just under 20,000 square feet. The property is essentially covered. The entire 20-odd thousand is covered by building, parking, some plantings, some walkways, some stairs, some retaining walls. It's pretty much all developed. We have 3 driveways, non-descriptive driveways, meaning there's no designated ins and outs. We have 17 parking spaces, no handicap space provided. We have a dumpster with no screening. We have this property with no drainage whatsoever. We have this property with some crumbling sidewalks on Church Street. We have on the southerly boundary line, as you look at the property straight on, it would be the left side of Church Street. We have a row of arborvitaes and a picket fence nestled inside the arborvitaes. We have a small tree area to the rear of the property, adjacent to Chuck Joseph's. Our existing snow area is behind space number 3 through 11. So Tom is proposing a 4,000 square foot addition, taking off the back portion of the property, fixing the burned out section, adding an addition over the existing garage. We have an overhead door and a man door with existing elevations that we need to maintain. We're not doing anything to number 6. Existing number 6 is remaining the same. So we're looking to make improvements. We're required to have 1 handicap space. So,
Hey, Dave, do you have any drawings you can share?
John, do you have the ability to call up sheet number 4?
I can, but you can also share your screen if that would be easier, or I can do it if it's easier for you to.
It's easier for you, I think. I don't have that.
I'll pull it up.
Please, thank you. Thank you. Main Street is to the right side. Church Street is to the bottom side. The existing driveway that comes off of Main Street, a portion of that driveway falls off our property by about 3.5 feet. So we're now looking, we've had discussions with Chuck Joseph's, and we're looking to move our driveway, if you will, to the east, bringing it away from the property line and maintain a 1-foot separation minimum from the back of berm to our property line. We're proposing that same driveway to be a 1-way in, and then proceeds up to and kind of opposite the existing building for number 17. We have 2 parking spaces, number 9, 10, and 11. That little cross-hatched area that you see on the parking area is our proposed handicap. That is the appropriate spot for the handicap. It's very much.
Hey, Dave, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. We'll get into more details, but I think right now we just wanted to get an initial project overview and again,
Sure.
just kind of understanding what exactly you're looking to do. And we have an outline that we'll follow to get into more details.
Perfect. Okay. Then I'll just summarize that we're required, we have 17 spaces. Well, because we're downtown business, we need to have a minimum of the 50% parking requirement. We're required to have 15 spaces. We provide 15 spaces. We're Going to update our trash. It's going to stay in the exact same location. We're going to put a concrete base with screening. We're going to end up replacing 4 or 5 panels of the walkway on the driveway out to Church Street with a new walkway. And right now we're proposing drainage as well, about the series of catch basins and drain manholes tying it into Main Street.
And just to confirm, what's your intended use for the additional 4,000 square feet?
It's office space with 3 apartments.
Okay, and that's for the whole site. What was the site previously, before the addition and before the fire?
I believe it's 1 apartment and office space.
Okay, so you're basically adding 2 apartments.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're adding 2 apartments and we're enlarging some office space.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can you speak to the building a little bit? Because I know in the back there, that's the chiropractor space is a single floor. Can you just show where the new building is going to go?
Yes, it's that cross-hatched area is the existing building. There's kind of a bold line. Thank you. That bold line is our addition. So that's our addition there. We're going to add a 2nd floor to the back portion of the building, and then we're going to add a 2nd floor over the garage.
So will both the, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, will both, and I'll keep it high level, will the, so both of those, the old building and the new building, both be same height, 2 floors, or?
I believe they will be. I know that the 1st floor is going to remain the same. Scott, I don't know if he's here yet, but I got to believe that we're going to maintain both floor elevations. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. And Dave, do you have any elevations, or just to give us a little bit more of a sense for what you have planned? Do you have any other drawings that you can share with us?
In the pack, here we go. In the package, there we go.
There we go. That's what I was looking for.
Yep. So the left side of that drawing is the Main Street is to the left. The front portion there is the existing Main Street. And then you can see that we're adding the addition, 1st and 2nd floor. You can see to the existing garage, we have that man door and overhead door. We're going to maintain those elevations and then build above the garage.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a real quick question.
Yeah, hang on, Dave. If we're gonna get into, I'm fine with it if it's an overall question, but if it's more detailed about things like parking spaces and that sort of thing, we'll get to it.
Yep, no, just wanted to real high level. First of all, I'll comment that I think this is going to look a lot nicer than what it currently does. So I think that's great. Secondly, I just wanted to ask a process question. Have they gone through the design review board with this?
They're scheduled, I think, for September 21st.
Correct.
Thank you.
We've been through historical and we're all set with historical.
All right. Let's go ahead and go to the staff report, and we'll get through a few of these things, and we'll get into some of the additional. Well, we'll get into the decision criteria and some further discussion. John, do you want to give us the staff report, including comments from the fire department, public works, and the town engineer?
Sure. So this is a minor site plan because it does not cross the threshold of 5,000 square feet gross floor area, nor is it altering the parking area with 25 spaces or more. They're just reducing it by 2 spaces, I believe. So that is why it's a minor site plan. The comments that I had, I'll go over those first, is that, like Dave mentioned, they have not gone to the design review board yet. So that is September 21st. So we can add them to that agenda. And then the other comment I had, and this is from the new Chief Miller, We would like to have confirmation as to whether the building will be sprinklered per discussions with the Hopkinton Fire Department. And then moving on to fire department comments. Former Chief Slamman asked if the ambulance could get into the parking lot. He is looking for a swept path analysis, and I believe the new Chief Miller would also be looking for the same thing. And the fire department will coordinate with third party and the applicant to confirm conformance to regulations, and that ties in the sprinklering of the units. Department of Public Works is saying drainage shall be designed such that no runoff comes off the driveway onto the proposed sidewalk, bike lane, or Main Street so as to prevent flooding, ponding, or icing, especially with the new development of Main Street corridor. We don't want any issues with stormwater to happen there, so we have to mitigate those before they happen. Town engineer has said that they've coordinated with Mark Wadant to make sure the inverts match up with MassDOT and AF Amarillo, who is doing the Main Street corridor construction, and that connection is allowed and everyone is okay with it. And Dave Del Torrio also would like to recommend that if we approve, the conditions require the property owner to make a connection by installing a new drain manhole over the new drain pipe and get final approval from the town engineer on the means and methods for installing the new manhole, making the connection to the existing pipe, how that connection will be made, and all saw cutting, paving requirements, etc. Those are the only other town comments we've received.
Through the chair.
Yes, Mary, go ahead.
Gary, I believe Chief Miller is on the call with us.
Yes,
So if you want.
welcome, Chief Miller.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Do you have any additional comments beyond what Mr. Gelsich kindly shared with us?
No, what John brought forward, Gary, is where we're at today.
Okay, thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Sundar.
John made reference to something called sweep analysis. What exactly is that?
John,
Chief Miller, do you want to go ahead and explain for the group what the SWEP analysis is?
Absolutely.
Sorry.
It's called a swept path analysis. It's all good. Yeah, so it's called a swept path analysis, and what we ask builders to do when we do a project at this size or a large subdivision or anything like that where roads are questionable and corners, we ask to do a swept path off of our ladder truck, which is the longest. It's 39 feet 6 inches, and what that consists of a turning radius. It's all mapped out by the NFPA. Dave, I believe you have that documentation. You worked with us on that in previous years. And what it does is it allows us, shows that our ladder truck will get in an event of an emergency. We base it off of our largest piece. We know if we can get that piece of apparatus in there, then the rest, I apologize, then the rest of the apparatus will get in. So that's where we're at with, and that's what's called the swept path analysis. And the piece we're looking at, I can be very quick, I can show you, is the one-way driveway coming in. We're looking at that first corner where the handicap parking is. It's showing it's 13 feet 2 inches. That was the area we were questioning if we need to come in with emergency vehicles on that west side new parking area, one-way parking area.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
Where is that area, John?
Need to back
It's
this
further
out.
to the left, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Gary, if you look right, see the
Right
handicap
there, yep,
spot?
I see it.
Yeah, the
The handicap spot,
13.2
20
is,
feet by 8 feet.
you got it. That was the area we were questioning whether we could get our ladder truck or even a pumper into that area, making that swing right there.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
You're welcome.
All right, so just moving forward, just to remind everyone, decision criteria for this, the board must determine if the proposed application conforms to the site plan standards as contained in section 210-136-.1 of the zoning bylaw. So that's what we should be using to evaluate this. And one other comment that given the nature of this project, if you recall at the last meeting, we opted to have Beta as part of their review focus only on the stormwater implications, just given the structure and the proposal and whatnot. So Beta's review is not for a a full, I say that funny, a full minor site plan review. Their comments are only focused on the stormwater piece. So we can go ahead and get into some discussion in conformance with the site plan standards. Really quickly, I just, and I know we don't have specifics listed out here. I think there's a couple of things that I want to make sure that we close out on and have some good discussion around. The first is the parking situation. And candidly, just that we're adding space to the building, but we're removing parking spaces. I want to make sure that we think this through really well. The second, of course, is the stormwater piece. The third piece that I have here is to Chief Miller's comments is emergency access. And I think, candidly, given the prior history, I think that's in a congested part of town. I think that's particularly important. And then the fourth piece that I just would love to flush out is whether the building would be sprinklered. That's kind of my short list. And I'll just really quickly now ask if board members have other sort of areas that we want to dig into or focus on, or things that topics of interest that we want to make sure we discuss in more detail.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't see a site plan visit on the agenda, and I think that would be a good idea. This is I'm a little concerned about a couple of things. One is already discussed the swept path for the fire truck. I think we'll probably have to spend some time on that, and also the division between the property right next to it on the the west side. It drops about 10 feet. For the most part, the property is pretty flat, but it does drop about 10 feet. And right now, there's just a steep hill there that doesn't get maintained very well, but I would imagine they're probably going to put in a stone wall or something like that, but we can discuss the details on that later.
Yeah, I good call on the site plan. I'm not positive. I think either the applicant can respond, but I think there's a planned wall there as part of the project next door, I think. But I don't know if the applicant has any details on that or not. Yes, go ahead, Dave.
Yep. So to answer your question about sprinkler, we are going to sprinkle the building. So let's sort of put that to sleep, but we are going to provide sprinklers for the building.
Sorry, just to clarify, you are or are not?
We are. Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
We've had discussions with Chuck Josephs and Chuck Joseph about the common lot line, the westerly side between the two properties. Where Chuck's people preparing a planting plan for that slope, and that Chuck and Tom are going to sit down and work out a planting plan for the slope. So there is no wall proposed by Tom, but there is a wall further back proposed by Chuck, further southerly, away from our property, that Chuck is proposing a retaining wall.
Okay.
It's going to remain the same.
Okay.
The two properties for the length of the common line.
So really quickly, I just want to go back. Are there other sort of items of discussion? Yes, Mary.
I believe you already mentioned it, but the stormwater and drainage, I just want to make sure that we cover that pretty well.
Yep. We've got Beta's assessment on that to help us out as well. Other topics? Okay. So let's go ahead and to your point, Dave, I'm happy to hear about the sprinklers, so we can check that one off. I do want to say, I think before we go too much further, I think Dave's suggestion is a good one about a site walk. I know that that's a fairly accessible property that all of us have driven by in the past, but would you be open to a site walk? And typically we do these on Saturday mornings.
Yeah, Tom, are you? Yep, you're not against that, right? No.
Oh, I would definitely be open to that. I would look forward to that.
Okay. For the planning board members, how does this Saturday morning work?
Here, does that work for the applicant?
It doesn't work
Yes.
for me. I'm involved in a charity event this Saturday that I have to be at. So I can't do this Saturday.
Okay, is there a possibility, I don't know if you, we could either push it back to another Saturday, or, to be honest, Tom, you don't need to be there, but we would want somebody from, from your team.
From our team, that you could easily do it without me. I'm good with that.
I can make it. Dave, are you available?
Yes, I am. Yep.
Just in the morning, Gary?
Yeah, I think, yes, it's in the morning. We like to work around Sundar's tennis schedule. So, Sundar, what time on Saturday morning?
9:30 is fine. Through the chair, I just wanted to say, Saturday is also poly arts, so I hope that is not interfering with activities.
So it's you, Mr. Chair, why don't we push it back 1 week so the applicant can be there?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, particularly with poly arts, just thinking of parking and whatnot. So then we would be looking at Saturday, the 25th.
That works for me still.
Okay.
Tom, are you around the 25th?
Yes, I am, and that works for me. I'll make that work.
All right, and for the board members, just really quickly, Jane, does that work for you?
Tentatively, yes.
Tentatively, Dave? Dave's a thumbs up, Mary's a thumbs up, Sundar, 9:30. Deb?
Yeah, I'm not sure at this point.
Okay. Shahadul?
I have a 10 o'clock engagement appointment, but I can stay for half an hour.
Okay. Well, we might have to have you and Sundar arm wrestle to see what time.
Through the chair, I can, if I need to be there at 9 o'clock, I can be there.
Okay. Rob, how about you?
Yeah, that's fine with me, either one.
Okay. Let's just go ahead and plan it for 9:30. I think this one should be relatively quick. We don't have a lot of ground to cover. Seems like 9:30 seems to work reasonably well for everybody. All right. 9:30 on the 25th it is. All right, let's go to the emergency access piece, since we've got Chief Miller on the line. And so for the applicant, have you initiated that SWOT path analysis, or do you have any update or additional information to provide?
Yes. When we had our pre-conference, when Steve Slemon was the chair and Bill was there as well, Chief Miller, it was suggested that we use a 30-foot long unit ambulance into the property, not the 39-foot long ladder. So on the last page, we've done a sweep analysis coming in from Main Street, going through that 13.2 section, and then going out on the right-hand side of number 6. And everything appears to be working. It's tight, but it's working.
Gary, through you, if I could ask a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Dave, is there any way, and I apologize, I'm new to this piece here, the hashtag mark next to the handicap, what is that piece for? And is there any way to push that handicap parking over closer to the curb?
The handicap needs to be, we're making it van accessible. So it needs to be 8 by 20. So they roll into space number 9, which is the handicap, and then get out the right-hand side. So the hatched area is the unloading portion of the handicap space.
Okay.
And Dave, do you need a full 8 feet for that unloading area?
Excuse me?
I was asking if you needed a full 8 feet for that unloading area, but I see Mr. Richardson nodding his head yes.
Yep.
So my only other question, Gary, if it's through you, is if you look at the SWOT path analysis, it shows a tire mark to actually go into that parking spot. If we have someone that doesn't pull up directly to the wheel stop and the back end of the car is out, even with the ambulance, it's going to be very tight. And you are correct. We did agree. Now that I look back at my notes, that we agreed on the ambulance going through for our sweat path. Even if a vehicle is out anyway in there, we're not going to get something back. Is there any way we could get a little bit more in there, Dave, at all?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I have a suggestion. I'd just like to try it.
Go ahead, Dave.
So can you flip the parking lot and the exiting area? Because there's more likely to be a car permanently there in the outside spot. And if it was on the inside spot, it would seem to make sense.
I think I know the answer to that, but I'll look to Mr. Richardson.
It would give more room to the fire truck.
We could look at that. It would mean that we're asking the accessible van to back into the space.
That's my concern, is that given that that's a one-way entry coming in, back into a space and be facing the wrong direction on a one-way in.
Yeah, it's difficult. We looked at several options here.
Oh, because the exit's always on the passenger side?
Yes.
Yes.
And now again, it is a van accessible space. Most likely it would be utilized by someone in, a handicapped person in a regular vehicle. I guess interesting. I wonder if we can come up with the fact that if it's a vehicle, it could park in the hatched area, which would then they'd pull straight in, and then they'd have better access coming out of the driver's side. Let us do a little research on that.
Yeah, just one other thought, Scott. Does the handicap spot need to be 20 feet long? Because I'm just looking at the other spots are 17 feet long.
That I don't know.
8
off the
plus
top of my
8,
head.
8 plus 8 is 16. So even if you were to turn this sideways, that would actually shorten that, or move that front corner back 4 feet.
We'll look into that.
Okay, I think Dave looks like he's holding his hand up. So
Yep. The other option is for a van accessible, it does need to be 8 by 20. But why couldn't we just change the opposite to that? Change the curb line on the other side, opposite the near the building. Instead of having a radius that's 15, maybe we could go a little bit larger and increase that dimension from 13.2 to 14 or 14 and a half.
We might be able to do that.
So let's do this.
We'll work on
we've
that.
got that site plan, that site walk, plan for the 25th. I think you probably hear us that I'm speaking for my fellow board members, but we want to make sure that in all circumstances that the appropriate emergency vehicles can get back into the lot, into the building. So I think there's a little bit more work to do there, and you can work on that.
Mr. Chair, can I just throw out one more thought that they can take with them?
Sure, Dave.
You might want to think about flipping that 90 degrees and just line it up with the other parking lots. And yes, it'd be a little trickier to make a U-turn to get in, but it would line up like the other parking lots, other parking spaces. Just a thought.
Yep.
Okay. So while we're on the theme of parking, and I realize, I just wonder if you can give us a little bit more detail on the parking calculation. And again, candidly, I'm just a little bit concerned that we're adding 2 apartments that have I don't recall the number of bedrooms in each of those apartments, but we're adding utilization for the property, and we're getting rid of parking spots, which, as we know, parking is a sensitive topic downtown.
Correct. You want me to respond?
Sure, go ahead.
So yes, we are doing all of what you have stated. However, we are again enjoying the
relaxation of the parking requirements in the downtown area. We would anticipate that we may have to have some reserve spaces noted for the apartments, because they basically would be there, potentially have need for a parking spot, 24 hours, 24/7. We are also counting on the additional 30 some odd public parking spaces that are being provided next door for the use of people that are visiting this facility for retail or commercial use, or people that are working here. Again, these are not large square footages for office use. So you're probably looking at practitioners that are really just either have one or two employees at the most. So a combination of all of that, we felt that there should be adequate parking here. And again, with the added public parking downtown, we felt that it would work.
Okay, but you could have retail on this site as well, correct?
We have,
Yes.
We could. We have not calculated it for retail, though.
Okay, so
on the other
If I
hand,
may comment on that,
Go
if
ahead.
I may comment on that, we've made arrangements for the tenants who existed in 17 Main prior to the fire. They are going to be coming back. So there'll be no usage change there. They're coming back.
Yeah, I understand that, but we're also reviewing this for all of the allowable uses, not just what you have.
I understand. Okay, I understand.
Because if you sell this property and someone else says, I want to put a bakery in there, that's if it's an allowable use, that could change that substantially.
Mr.
Sure,
Chair,
I understand.
I'm going to ask all my questions today and then not ask any at the next meeting. The questions and comments. Just one point, if he's referencing using the parking lot possibly to the west, would there then be stairs through the wall and the upgrade there? If not, they're going to have to
Chuck
walk around.
Joseph and I have had a conversation about that. And Chuck thinks it's a great idea. We're working on that. I think it's a great idea too.
Thank you.
Okay. So, sorry, Mr. Richardson, just going back, can you just walk us through the calculation for the number of spots required and just number of bedrooms? And I realize that the parking requirements are relaxed downtown, but just educate all of us a little bit on that calculation.
Do you want me to pull that up? It'll take me a minute to find it unless you have it handy.
Don, do you have, I apologize, the computer I'm working from today, I do not have access to the files.
No, hold on.
Pull it up, but I don't have it handy though.
Dina, is that something you can find quickly?
I'm looking currently at the application for site plan. Maybe it's in there. I can pull that out. Yes, I have it. Hold on.
I also have the parking regulations.
Can everyone see this?
Yeah, but we want the kind of the chart that the spreadsheet that I had done that itemizes the apartments and the office space, which I can't find real quick. Hmm. Oh, wait a minute. I believe I found it. Dave, are we providing 17 spaces? Make sure I have the right one.
I think you're providing 15.
Yeah, I have an older.
Yeah.
But it's 12 that's required.
That's correct. Yeah.
Scott, do you want to share your screen? And is that something you can share? I'm just.
Yeah. I thought, hold on. Yeah, so this is the square foot summary that talks about the added square footage. And then down below, I had thought that we were providing a total of 17 spaces because there's 19, let's see, what are there now? Okay, so office space requires 3 per 1,000. We have a total of 63, 64. So we need 19 spaces for the offices. We are providing 5 bedrooms in 3 apartments. So that needs 1 parking space per bedroom for a total of 24. We have a 50% reduction for downtown. So we were required to provide 12 at one point, and I hope we still are. We were proposing to provide 17. Is that correct, David?
We're providing 15. We lost because of the handicap space.
Ah, okay.
Yep.
Sorry.
All right. Thanks, Scott. That's helpful. And just to confirm, the 50%, this is a question for John, the 50% reduction, that applies to residential as well, correct?
I have to confirm, but I believe so. I think it's all uses in the downtown business. I'll confirm while you guys are discussing.
Okay. So just to summarize, based on the building and intended uses, and so Scott, just going back to the previous question of commercial versus retail, does that calculation vary if any of that's being used for retail, or is it the same number of spots per 1,000 square feet?
I think the retail requirement is a little more stringent. I'm sorry, I don't have that off the top of my head. Perhaps John can enlighten us there.
I think it's 4 per 1,000 for retail versus 3 per 1,000 for office.
I think you're right. So
Through the chair, 4 per 1,000 is what it is for retail. Office is general office, medical and dental office is 3 per 1,000. And the downtown business district is shall require 50% of the amount required in subsection 1 for each non-residential use. So residential is not included.
Okay.
So basically we do need, let's see, 19. So we just divide 19, 9 plus 5 is 14 spaces then. If you're saying we cannot take the reduction for the residential?
Correct.
Okay. So yeah, if we were looking at a retail uses, then depending on the quantity of square footage of retail, we could end up being deficient. So that's why right now it's offices. And again, the uses previously were medical offices. There's a chiropractor and a esthetician. So they were office use. And that's what is intended to be come back in there.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. I also just want to be conscious of future uses as well.
Sure.
Okay. To the board, questions, comments, thoughts with regards to parking?
I guess I do. I'm just wondering whether there can be some sort of accommodation, because it's bringing important retail in, and perhaps there can be sort of some accommodation, in contrast to the residential, and it's also bringing important residential in. So, is that ever done, John? Beyond code, is there accommodations made?
So section D of section, what is this, 210-124 allows for parking space reduction, but it's via special permit.
And where would they go to get a special permit?
And then I'm just keep on reading, and it says, as part of the site plan approval process, the planning board may allow fewer parking spaces than are required by this chapter for a use to be constructed, provided that the spaces to be unconstructed shall be delineated in a site plan. So that doesn't really apply here. I was looking for any other options. So the special permit would be through the planning board. They'd have to file a new application. And then they can do shared and off-site parking, but that's a challenge in of itself.
Well, I sort of like some of that thought. I don't know how the team that's proposing it feels about it, but what I like about it is that the downtown is, number one, becoming more walkable. Number two, it would provide much better access for the fire trucks, whatever they want, if we could reduce it down a few more spaces. So I would be in favor of having them take a look at that, but of course with their agreement on filing.
All right, we'll hold off on that for a second, but Jane, go ahead.
I just had one quick comment in regards to a previous comment. I don't know if it was Scott or someone else that mentioned it. Putting a walkway between his property and Chuck Joseph's, because there could be an occasion where they might be able to use parking between the two of them, depending on the hours of the different businesses and things like that. They may be able to come up with some sort of partnership agreement that may be able to help both businesses.
So through the chair, the parking lot.
Interesting you say that.
The parking lot.
Hang on one sec, Tom. Go ahead, John.
The parking lot on Chuck Joseph's property is actually going to be town owned. It's going to be a public parking lot. So the agreement wouldn't be with Chuck.
Oh, well, maybe with the town, I don't know. But even there, that's another opportunity to share the parking.
I have.
Tom, go ahead.
Another property in another town. If any of you been to John Stone's in Ashland, you've probably parked in my parking lot. What happens, I have a reciprocal deal with John Stone's where I own the office building behind John Stone's. At night, they use our parking lot. By day, we use their parking lot. And everybody wins. And nobody wins.
So, and I think that's generally the intention of having a municipal lot downtown as well. My caution, and I think it's great to see the investment in this building. I actually like the fact that it's a one-way coming in, because as we will have a two-way bike path going across it, that's one less. I think that's actually reducing some of the risk there. I think there's a lot of good things about this. I'm just also, we as a board here, as town officials, hear a lot of frustration with lack of parking. And so I just want to make sure that we think this through really, really well. Particularly, and there's no special permit before us right now. So, I don't think it is an option for us to go below what's required. But, in general, in other projects, I can think of, the original proposal, the Mr. Mastriani's proposal. I mean, that was another example of mixed use space. And in general, as a board, there was a lot of concern about the number of parking spots. And that one was a project where they were putting in substantially more than was required. So, I just want to make sure that we're very, very thoughtful about this.
So through the chair, there's one other item within the downtown business district. The spaces can be claimed by the use if they are on the street directly adjacent to the use between the side lot lines of the lot containing the use and the same side of the street. So I don't know, given the design of Main Street corridor, if there's going to be any lined parking spaces on Main Street directly in front of the use. But if there are, then those can be claimed as parking spaces for that use as well. And if they're only looking for 1 or 2 spaces, that may satisfy the requirement.
Through the chair,
Yes, go ahead, Mary.
there's also a space on Church Street that probably would apply because it's in front of your property. Right?
With the
So-
chair, listening, yeah, sorry. go ahead.
Yes, go ahead, Shahidul.
Yeah, no, just quick comments. So listening to all that, it seems like we may need to look at kind of the overall bigger picture, and given, you know, the rationale and some of the clear benefits, it may be worth looking at that. In the surrounding area altogether, what is the retail, office, and parking ratio, that type of calculation? I don't know what the precedence is, but that may serve the larger goal here.
I had an idea that sort of piggybacks on if it's okay through the chair.
Go ahead, Deb.
I had an idea of maybe piggybacking on Jane's idea and talking about possibly sort of, you know, squeezing out a few more feet in width with the retaining wall. Talking to Chuck Joseph as to where he's going to put that retaining wall, and perhaps make the retaining wall all along that side, if that gives more space versus a slope towards the front, and that can give, you know, I'm not sure aesthetically whether it would be better, but it would definitely give more width to the trucks coming through. That's another way to maybe get some more radius there.
So I'm going to suggest this, and I think there's, I guess my request to the applicant is that they go back and do a little bit more work on this. I think number one, we need to make sure we understand exactly how many spots are required. It sounds like there's some ability to absorb or to include some of the street parking as part of that. You know, clearly we've got some concerns about emergency access vehicles, you know, and we haven't even talked about things like snow removal, or actually where you put snow. I know you outlined where the dumpster was, but I don't want to get into a full brainstorm and design session here, but you know, I think we know you're coming back anyways, so let's take this opportunity to go back and, you know, just kind of hearing some of the feedback, see if you can make some modifications that work with your project and would clean this up a little bit.
Sure.
Does that sound reasonable?
Very much.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. All right. And the next one that we had here, which I think in this one we're fortunate to have Beta's review as well, is specifically the stormwater. And to the points made earlier, this site previously didn't have any stormwater management. Mr. Paradis, do you want to go ahead and walk us through your comments, and in particular those that are still outstanding?
Sure. Yeah, we've had the advantage of going back and forth. Well, we provided comments, and Dave has provided responses to a majority of them, and to a satisfactory. So there's like 3 or 4 minor things. So the first one would be provide information. So they're connecting the overflow of the drainage system to, I think, a future drainage system in Main Street. And it wasn't clear where the proponents' project stopped and the town project started. So we just like to differentiate that difference, and or if it isn't, it doesn't connect, the whole system doesn't connect to an existing system. That makes sense. It's just shown continuing down Main Street, the drain line. The second issue is SW3. Test pit indicates the high groundwater is within a foot of the bottom of the basin. I inadvertently had said that it was a foot and it was allowed, but actually the standard is 2 feet. In this case, I don't think it's going to be much of an issue. This is a very, I want to say, a tight site. The whole downtown is compromised relative to stormwater runoff. So I think allowing that a waiver for the 2 foot for a 1 foot separation would benefit the town and the applicant in this situation. So I think the applicant should just formally request a waiver. That's all. SW10, some minor things we want to clean up with the O&M plan. Just want to have a standalone complete O&M plan, and I think they C and D add a street sweeping component to the O&M plan, which is pretty standard. And that's it. So those, I think the system that they're proposing will be a benefit to the overall stormwater in the area.
Okay. Thanks, Phil. Appreciate that, and appreciate the applicant working with Beta as well. That certainly helps us out a lot when you're working through these things. Start with the board. Any questions or comments with regards to stormwater? No. Okay.
To the chair, I had a quick clarification question.
Yes, go ahead, Shaul.
Yeah, thank you. So for the 2 feet versus 1 feet, do you have any opinion if there is going to be any long-term impact because of that?
So typically it's to protect the groundwater. To provide some buffer between the bottom of the system and the groundwater in case there's a spill or something goes wrong or whatever. In this case, the soils are very slowly draining, and so it's not likely that pollutants would directly discharge into to the groundwater. Typically what happens in these situations, a matting is formed on the bottom, and those microorganisms form and feed on the pollutants that come out of these systems. So it's like for an A soil, they actually require more treatment before it gets there, because they're afraid it's going to be directly discharged to the groundwater. But in this case, it's a borderline CD soil. It's very slowly draining. And that's why you have a lot of issues in the downtown area, the poor soils. But I think just containing the drainage on site and slowly metering it out to the system is a benefit to the town, and whatever recharge you can get is also a benefit to the town. So.
Makes sense. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Phil. Are there any comments or questions from the public on this project? And any other further questions or comments from the board?
The only other question I had would be for Phil. Phil, when you were talking about the discharge that was going down the driveway, that it is going down Main Street, that it has no location to go to, is that a substantial amount of water, or is that just a little bit of water?
So they're not increasing the runoff, but they're controlling it. Right now, it primarily flows right out of the driveway onto the street. So they're actually capturing it and putting it in the street system. That makes sense.
Okay, so then it's not a hindrance. It's going into a system. It's not going directly into. Okay, thanks. I just misunderstood that. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm hearing I think a couple of areas of focus for the applicant. One is just taking a good hard look at that parking, driveway access, handicapped spot, sweat path analysis, and hopefully coming back with something that just meets those needs a little bit better. The second is just firming up the calculation of the number of parking spots required. The third being a formal waiver request with regards to the 1 foot versus 2 feet of separation related to SW3. And then I guess the last thing we have is we have a site walk on the 25th. If there's no further comments, let me just ask, are there any other, again, I think I already asked this, but any other questions, comments? And if not, then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and vote to continue this to the 27th of September. All right, and I'm assuming the applicant is comfortable with us continuing this to the 27th. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to continue the public hearing for 17 Main Street to September 27th.
Mary Larson Marlowe, so moved.
Deborah Feinbrook, second.
All right, and assuming no further discussion, Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane? Jane, you're muted.
Jane Murren, yes. Sorry about that.
No worries. Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Subramanian, yes.
Shahdul?
Hayden Manan, yes.
And Gary Trindle is a yes as well. So thanks, Tom. Thanks, Scott. And thanks, Dave. We will see you on Saturday morning, the 25th of September at 9:30 a.m.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've continued those. We don't have anything to close. That takes us back to the last couple of administrative items we have. The first one, just wanted to have a quick discussion with the board and talk a little bit about at what point we go back to face-to-face meetings. So, you know, my initial thought, and I think that we're a little premature to go back to them quite yet. I think just given a lot of uncertainty out there, and personally, I think there's some nice advantages to being remote. So, you know, my initial thoughts are that we would continue with the remote setup, and, you know, touch base probably mid-November or so, and reevaluate with the goal likely of returning to in-person. I'm thinking just, you know, again, this is pending a lot of things here, but, you know, if we were to target a January return to in-person, that's kind of my initial thoughts. But, you know, this is wanted to get some input from the board as to how people are thinking about in-person when we return to in-person meetings.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Dave.
My one stipulation that I prefer is that we can meet with no masks.
Okay. Mary?
Yeah, I think your, January tentative goal date is not a bad idea. Of course, I would consider that it should be, like pending the data that we see in terms of any other surges. And I wouldn't be averse to waiting until the end of flu season. So February, March instead. But yeah, I agree that Dave's idea too of waiting until we would all feel comfortable not wearing masks is appropriate. So yeah.
Through the
Okay.
chair.
Yes.
I agree with everybody here. I think an early Jan date seems safe, given that a lot of companies also are deferring their moves to early in 2022. And I think the point that Dave and Mary made about the mask is valid, because you don't want to be muffled while you talk, and that could create other issues. So anything that we can do, wait until we don't have to wear a mask, actually makes the meeting productive as well. Otherwise, this state of affairs is fine for most people because we're not wearing a mask inside our home. So yeah.
Yeah.
I have another point. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
Okay. I've heard from at least one older member of our community that they would, like to see ongoing option for them to participate remotely. Now, I know that there's all sorts of issues to make that work, but I just want to keep in mind that some people are going to feel that they want to stay away a little longer than perhaps the rest of us. And we should consider if there's options to make that workable for them.
Yeah.
TV.
Mary, I think that's a good point, and I will say that I think that having some remote option is in some cases a big benefit. I think of people that want to tune in or want to follow along and maybe have some comments, but maybe don't want to spend their entire evening. I also think of those of us that at some point will start traveling again for work. Remote affords some flexibility. I will say John has actually already reached out to the HCAM staff about using the HCAM studio, which is my preferred location. It's actually great for the HCAM folks. Acoustics are good. There's plenty of seating. It's air conditioned. There's parking. I mean everything about it. But I guess I'm curious, John, if you're aware of any new technology that we have access to that better enables a hybrid meeting where some people are in person and some people are remote than what we've had in the past.
So I'll start off by saying we can only do remote meetings where the majority of the board is not in person up to April 1st. So at that point, we'd have to go majority in person, whether masks or not, unless they change it. There's already, we have the technology now. It's basically Zoom, where if a majority, I believe it's if a majority is present, the other board members could meet remotely. So if somebody was traveling and they wanted to participate, they could. We are also able to do public participation via Zoom. The issue is we haven't really worked out how to do it without IT being at the meeting as well. So we'd have to talk to IT, we'd have to talk to HCAM, see what the capabilities are at the HCAM studio, see if we could manage it ourselves without IT being there, and just figure out all the logistics that way. I think it's doable, but I just don't know what form it would be in and how effective it would be, but that's something we could try.
Okay, thanks. Jane, I think you had your
Yeah,
hand
I
up.
was just going to jump in and say as far as we can put it off as far as possible into the future would be fine with me. I think there are a lot of people out there who would not feel comfortable coming to a meeting indoors just yet.
Okay, thanks, Jane.
The chair, I think I concur what we are collectively saying. So as much and as long as we need to be comfortable, I think we should put it out for now. And April 1st is our legal limit at the moment.
So let's go ahead and do this. I think we're all in agreement. It's too early right now. Let's reevaluate in mid-November, see where things stand, and we can go from there. But I hear loud and clear. It sounds like it sounds like there is a preference for an environment where we. I want to be careful because it's not so much that we don't have to wear masks, but that people are comfortable not wearing masks. And two, I do think remote participation has some benefits. So I want to make sure that for as much as we talked about people that don't have access to technology that want to participate, we've got to Jane's point, we got the other side of the coin for people that maybe are not comfortable going to a large a group of people indoors. So I'm a little cautious on the hybrid options. I'll tell you, at my place of employment, even if we're all in the same office, if a good portion of the team is remote, then we actually all call in remote just to maintain parity and make sure that there's conversations aren't being dominated and that sort of thing. But let's touch base again in November. Rob, I see do you have your hand raised? No, maybe not, but I see you unmuted yourself.
Oh yeah, I agree. Just a little, a few points, I guess. So, one, I have kids that are under 12, so they're not vaccinated. So there's a risk. Obviously they go to school every day and they're masked, but it just adds a whole nother dynamic. And kind of when things were looking good, the company I work for, we went back to in person, and now we've kind of reversed course and the office is still open, but most people are working remotely. But if you want to go into the office, you have to take an at-home COVID test in the morning to go in. So we were on a path of being back to normal, but I feel like as a society, we've regressed, and I don't think much has changed in terms of getting back into in-person meetings. All the points everybody made resonates. I have older parents that live in town. Like, they probably wouldn't be super psyched to go to a meeting with a bunch of people in a physical location. And I work in an industry where travel is normally a lot, and we're still not at the point where we're really traveling to any type of regularity. So if that's a barometer, that's one barometer in my work life that bleeds into this life. But yeah, we're not back to normal.
Okay, thanks, Rob. All right, it sounds like we're reasonably well aligned. Let's continue to monitor and continue remote at least for the next 2 months or so. Next item we have is the Upper Charles Trail Committee update and request for a vote. Although, in speaking with John, I think that's likely going to be more of a straw poll as opposed to a firm vote. So Jane, do you want to go ahead and share your slides, or John, do you want to?
I think John has them. So while he's pulling up the slides, maybe I could just jump into it a little bit and say that, yeah, the Upper Charles Trail has been working hard for many, many years, probably 8 or 9 years now, and we continue to make progress. This most recent step is a continuation of the Campus Trail Connector. So if you look on the map here, you'll see there's a blue dot in the middle. The portion below the blue dot is what we have proposed for, and that's called the campus school connector. And that's the piece last year where we applied for and received a grant for pre-engineering studies. I only include that because I want the planning board to see where we're going with this. The parcel that I'm asking the planning board to look at now is where it says segment 6 on the upper part of the map, where the Marathon School building is, and it's in red letters. So back in August of 2016, we went before the planning board when the planning board was considering the site plan review from the school committee. And at that time, we spent multiple meetings requesting a clear path circumventing that whole Irvine to Darrow property. At the end of the day, we had a state engineer come in and advise us that building this type of a trail is an allowable use within the buffer zone. So that's what the planning board ultimately went with at that time. So what I'm here tonight for is to advise the planning board that our committee is very excited about this. We voted a couple of weeks ago to move forward with this plan, and also at the same time apply for a grant for a similar engineering, pre-engineering study that we did last year for the southern section, or the most westerly section. So having said that, we felt it was wise to come before any interested parties, and planning board obviously being one, where you previously voted to uphold the state law that allows us to go forward. We thought that it would add weight to our grant if we could get a positive nod for this conceptual plan going forward. We cannot at this time provide any additional information because we can't do that without having the engineering studies. And so in order to get the engineering studies, we have to go through these processes of applying for the grants and getting it. So this is an update, and it's an informational meeting to advise the planning board. And what we are requesting them to look at is the school property itself, the town property, and where we would be going with that. Just a little bit of extra information at the same time, within the next month or so, we're going to be going before Parks and Rec to advise them of our plans and how we plan to proceed through the EMC park. And we also are going to go before the school board to advise them and hopefully get their nod of approval again for this conceptual plan and nod of approval, because we feel it's going to add weight to our grant, our application. The grant application we will be opening up or starting to write in October, in another month or two. The closing date for both of these grants, and several grants that we're actually applying up for, is in February of 22. And if we're successful in getting these grants, we will be starting to move forward with them on July 1 of 2022. So having said that, I'm open to questions or comments from the planning board.
Thanks, Jane. And I, first and foremost, just want to say thank you, and I appreciate how much work you and the Upper Charles Trails Committee have put into this. I know it's been an extraordinarily long process and a controversial one as well. There's always a lot of debate about why can't this be done and why can't that be done. And you know, the reality of it is that I'm aware that, you know, the old rail bed as an entity is doesn't exist like it does in Milford or Holliston.
Correct.
So I think that's important for people to consider that you know, the reality of it is that for the trail to get through Hopkinton, it's going to be somewhat you know, piecemealed together. My question, Jane, can you just quickly show on the drawing here where that buffer zone infringement would be?
Sure. Maybe if John could enlarge the upper portion of the yellow trail, you will see that there is black boundary markers around the school itself. So and town-owned property, because actually the town voted, see that little tooth coming out? I believe the town purchased that recently. So the buffer zone is, or the setback, as we refer to it within the planning board, is in this case 40 feet wide, and it's a no man's land between the Marathon School property and the neighbors that are to the most east in this particular case that we're looking at.
Okay, so just to clarify though, I mean, one of the reasons we have buffer zones is to create a little bit of space between property lines.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're proposing is that the trail run within that 25-foot space of the property line. So it's not just the school committee or the school, not just the school that would be impacted, it's the property owners that abut the school as well.
Right, exactly.
So those property owners, are those on Blueberry Lane? Is that what that is above there? What's that street?
I believe some of it is. I know Blueberry Lane is up there somewhere. It's in that neighborhood. I'm not sure.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I would just like to remind everyone, we're at the 20,000 foot level here. And we really don't know exactly what the impacts of this are going to be unless we can get these pre-engineering studies accomplished. And then the next step after that would actually be full-blown engineering studies. So there's a lot of information that we still do not have to make final decisions on this. And the other thing I'd like to throw out there at this time is that the select board actually has the final stamp of approval on this whole thing. But we don't even have enough information to present to them at this point. We have to do our due diligence and get all of our information, or as much information as we can, before we go, as we continue to move forward and build. It's like building blocks here.
Okay, and I think we have I'm guessing we might have a comment or two from the public, but I want to get through the rest of the board first. So are there other questions or comments from board members?
Hey, Mr. Chair, I do have one. Jane, have you heard any negative feedback from any of the neighbors?
No, but I've received emails from concerned citizens that are worried about the traffic. And on Route 85 by McDermott Path. And I do have this is through the chair, I do have a prepared statement that our VHB engineers prepared for us that could be read into the minutes, just as an informational piece only, because this is so premature. But no, specifically, I've not received anything from the neighbors, nor have we gone forward to enlighten them. And I also would like to throw out here at this point in time that we do plan to have a public meeting probably within the next couple of months. So that at that time, we'll do our due diligence and notify other people.
But just to follow up, Mr. Chair. So Jane, when you say traffic, you mean car traffic? And if so, do you have like parking lots where you're expecting additional people to drive to?
At this point, it's preliminary, but there is parking at EMC Field, but we just don't have all of that information at this point in time.
I mean, my personal opinion is I don't think this would be an increased car traffic. It would just be the foot traffic that people would be concerned about, but.
Correct. And
is it the foot traffic or is it the safety of crossing Hayden Road, Jane?
I believe,
pedestrians cross.
I believe from the emails that I received from these folks, that they are concerned about the volume of traffic on Route 85 and the safety of people crossing there. But they're here to speak for themselves. I don't want to misinterpret them.
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Mary.
So general comment is that, I think this is excellent. We need to take steps toward the connections, and this is a really good one. In fact, when the Marathon Elementary was being proposed and engineered and so on, it was talked about to have a path to EMC Field and that area, and I think that's important to have for the kids there. There's definitely, there's always going to be the problem with traffic on 85 as far as I'm concerned. We have to cross someplace. And so I trust that the engineers and the committee and then through our public comment, we'll figure out ways to make it safer. And it's something that we're always going to have to deal with in town. And it's just, we can't say don't cross the street. That's not an option. So, so I'm fully in support, and I think this is great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
And I do want to say too, I want to make sure we stay focused here, because what we're looking to do is provide some level of input to the process on that, encroaching within that 25-foot buffer. So my understanding, Jane, is that we're not necessarily endorsing or voting on support for the whole plan. We're literally just
correct. It's
just acknowledging that we feel that it's appropriate to put the trail within 25 feet of the property line.
So I understand, Mr. Chair, that we're not doing that, but could we do that? I think it would make sense for the planning board to support this plan with a formal vote. After we hear the
certainly something we could do. I'd say that I think there's a lot more involved. Well, I guess I'd say two things. Number one, it's really not within our jurisdiction, because the Upper Charles Trails Committee actually rolls up under the select board. So to Jane's point, they have the heavier, they have the decision here. I'm certainly not opposed, because I think that trails are of a substantial interest to us, and I'm certainly not opposed to it. I just want to be clear that we don't have any authority over this.
Okay, thanks. I think it still would be, provided we hear all the feedback from the neighbors and understand this completely. I think it would be good to support it, regardless of whether it has weight or not, right?
And I guess just to that point, I guess that's my primary concern, is that I'm a little reluctant to vote or take a position on something when we haven't noticed those abutters that might be impacted by this. And maybe there's a way we can word this differently, or something to that effect, because I think to Jane's point, the engineering work isn't done. There are hearing processes. There's a whole lot more that has to go into it. It really is just a function of acknowledging that we're open to this. But I just want to be careful about endorsing a plan or showing support for a plan that
I understand what you're saying, and I think we can do that through verbiage with like concept, something like concept planned or something like that.
And through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Mary.
So I do support the use of the 25-foot buffer for a trail. It makes a lot of sense to me from what we see so far. But essentially, I agree that we're supporting taking this to a next step in a process, and the process will continue to go on and continue to get public comment as we have more detailed plans presented. So
I do have one more specific question, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Dave.
So Jane, that lower part of the yellow trail, is that new trail through the, because I'm not familiar with the center trail from one side of the high school property to the other side. Is that existing trail already?
It's existing as a conceptual plan only at this point in time. There is a piece of the old rail bed that we did pick up in our proposed plan. So what we did last year was we went in, we were successful in getting a Mass Trails grant for $160,000 or whatever it was to go in there and do pre-engineering studies. We have successfully completed that, and we are ready to go forward and move forward to the final engineering studies for that piece. After that, if we're successful and we get that done, then we can move forward for construction.
So Jane, can I just ask you that another way? Through you, Mr. Chair, can I just ask my question another way?
Sure,
I think what you're saying is that's new. So if they were if somebody walked the center trail today, they would walk along the loop road to get to the other side. Is that true? How would you get
Yes,
from
you
one side
cannot
of the
get
center?
to the woods as they exist today. You cannot make that. You cannot walk that path currently.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You can walk parts of it, but not all of it.
Through the chair.
Yes. Go ahead.
First off, thank you, Jane, for your continued very dedicated and hard work on this. Very much needed, and I appreciate that. My question was gonna around the financials. You are asking for a grant. How much is it gonna be? Who's gonna? What is the financing process for that? If you could walk through.
So
sure.
Sorry, hang on 1 second. I just want to honor that question, but I also just want to sort of keep this whole thing in scope, because we don't want to. I mean, I don't know how many thousands of hours the Upper Charles Trails Committee has already met to work through these things, but I don't know if the financing and the grant process is necessarily relevant to our discussion as to whether or not we're supportive of exploring a trail within the 25-foot buffer. So if you have a really quick answer to that, Jane, I'm okay with it, but I don't want to get into the details on the grant and the funding process at this point.
Right. Well, there are multiple different types of grants out there. The ones we've used in the past have a cap of, I believe it's like $300,000. You have to match through the town. We usually use CPC funding, which asks for 20% money from the town in either in like forms. We can, in fact, we can use our hours that we use for our committee or the combination with the CPC funding. So yes, the state has given us a lot of money and we hope to get a lot more from them.
Thank you. Yeah. To the chair.
Are there any other questions or comments with regards to the buffer zone?
Yeah, Gary, through the chair, could I ask one question?
Yep.
So, I guess why would we want to impose that on the homeowners when anyone that's traveling by foot or by bike could easily, like, if they could easily go up the driveway of the Marathon School. There's an existing road between the Marathon School and EMC Field, and go exit the EMC Field parking lot. It seems like this trail, it buys very little from my point of view. I guess I don't understand it.
Okay, well, that's a valid question. Through the chair, if I could answer that.
Yep, please do.
We've met with the school committee multiple times, and they have asked us not to use their road. They feel that it would be dangerous for the kids to be using that if we incorporated it into the Upper Charles Trail. They are absolutely thrilled with the idea of having a safe passage through the woods, through EMC Park to the new Marathon School. They see it and they view it as a much safer route, especially for the high school use. I guess they do overflow parking at EMC Park. And right now they're coming up that driveway and traveling down Hayden Road. They look at this as a much more safer route. And they specifically asked us not to use their driveway, I mean, their roadway.
But through the chair, I guess for all practical points of view, what person is really going to not, if they want, like, first off, they would just go down the road. But if they wanted to stay off the road, are they really, unless they're looking for extra distance to go, are they really going to follow the trail? Like, even though if the school says we'd prefer this trail doesn't follow our, like, is the regular jogger, biker going to say, oh, I'm going to go out of my way? Say they're a commuter. Are they going to go out of their way to follow a zigzag, like, unnecessarily, or just take the shortest path? And I would say they would take the shortest path. And like, I don't know. I don't live in Blueberry Lane, but do homeowners want a trail abutting their property? I don't know the answer to that.
A lot of trails that do abut of private property, and then you just take Center Trail as an example. That trail goes right up above within 5 feet of people's houses, and they love it. They absolutely love it. They go through their backyard and they get onto the trail. As far as us going down the school property, when they've said they don't want that, that's something we did not want to violate. And as far as taking trails through the woods, why do people take trails through the woods? Because they want to get off the main road. They view it as a much safer path. I think it's just a personal point of reference. You may prefer going down the road and taking the shortest route, but I think a lot of other people really enjoy getting into the woods and enjoying the outdoors and the environment. So we've been given this challenge and this chore by the select board, I think, because the people of Hopkinton, as the majority, have spoken up and said that they really want this trail. This is not our personal desire or wish. We're following the direction of the select board.
Jane, can I build onto that from the point of view of
Dave,
the
Sure.
trails?
I mean, it's not up to me, it's up to the chair.
I just thought it was maybe a little bit more of an informal discussion, but through you, Mr. Chair, can I add on to what Jane's saying?
Go ahead.
So, Rob, I totally agree with Jane. And it's kind of I don't know if we specifically call it out in our master plan, but it is a master plan for the town to add these trails and separate trails from traffic for, like Jane says, not only for, just the feeling of being in the woods, but also for safety. So I don't think it's appropriate for this conversation because we're talking about a buffer. But I think maybe if you feel that way, we should have a different discussion and see if that's a majority or if that's just your own feelings.
Yeah. So I think I think two things. Number one, I do want to keep our discussion tonight focused on that buffer zone. I'm excited to hear Jane mention a public input session because I think that's important. And for me personally, I'd rather have their plan come back to us after that public input session because I think that's just one more point of validation and one more point of input that as a publicly elected board that we can react to.
And Gary, I would like to renege my suggestion about voting on it tonight, because now that I think about this, I would like Jane to come before the Trails Committee before the planning board votes on it. That other body, that committee of the planning board. That's along with what you're saying is we just take a little more time before we take a stand on it.
Mr. Chair, I know we don't want to spend more time, but I'm not clear. What are we voting on? We are not voting on engineering because this is a proposal that we understand engineering, but we have a lot of questions around that. We are not voting on financials. So what is our criteria for voting? Is it awareness? And of course, we are all supportive. I'm not just clear on that.
So my understanding is that, and I think Jane hit on this, but they are preparing a grant submission. And the belief is that the grant submission would be stronger if the planning board was supportive of considering a trail located within the property buffer. So what it does is by us showing our support for this, just conceptually, that would increase the likelihood of grant funding.
That's correct.
Thank you.
And just to add on to that, this is in the spirit of communication, right? Whenever we propose something, you try to meet with all the boards and committees and get their support on that. And it's something you could take with you to, it's not easy to get things changed, right? So my feeling is just to support each other on this.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. On that note, I see enough support, so I'm not sure why we wouldn't vote tonight.
Yeah. So I see Mr. Lagoy, who has also emailed me earlier about it. Mr. Lagoy, do you have a comment? And I guess my request is, as usual, you can state your name and your address to start.
Yeah, Peter Lagoy, 21 Hayden Rose Street. I'm also the chair of the Trail Coordination and Management Committee. I would suggest, first of all, I'm not opposed to using the 25-foot buffer zone. I'm more concerned that you as the planning board hold off a little bit on endorsing something like this. The Upper Charles Trail Committee has finally, after many, many years, released the path that they're intending to follow for their trail. It involves 3 crossings of Hayden Rose Street. And in one area, right by EMC, a woman pushing a stroller was hit by a car. And a little further down, a child was hit and killed on a bike. And we're now adding 3 crossings to that street. It does not sound like
Peter,
planning.
Peter, sorry, I'm going to cut you off because I don't want to get into a discussion about the trail route. And
Right.
Whatever it is we vote on tonight, it's not going to be an endorsement of the proposed route.
No, I understand that, Gary.
That's not our intention. We don't have the input. We don't have public input. There's a whole bunch of reasons as to why we're not going to talk about that right now. So right now we're only talking about consideration of a trail located within the 25-foot buffer.
Okay, but my concern is that you've got to know the whole picture before each piece becomes important. The devil is in the details in these things. The other piece for you to think about from planning perspective is the southern part of that property, south of Marathon School, is certainly one of the locations being considered for a future school. It seems premature to endorse a engineering plan for a trail prior to at least hearing from the school committee where they're planning on putting that school. You would put the school in first and then the trail, not the other way around. Otherwise, you're simply wasting money, town's money. And I really think that's important.
Yep.
So to summarize, using the 25-foot buffer for a trail, I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a concern about is that the Upper Charles Trail Committee needs to do a lot of this public outreach, not regarding just this simple small piece, but regarding their plans for the entire trail. So we know what that is prior to anybody endorsing any one small piece. Otherwise, we get a patchwork of things put together. People say, gee, we've already spent all the money on these individual little pieces, and therefore the trail will go this way. I think there are much, much better, much, much safer routes.
All right.
So that's
Thanks,
it.
Peter. Any other comments from the public? Okay. Oh, Mr. Dochi. Go ahead. You're unmuted.
Chuck Dodgy, 25 Sanctuary Lane. Also a member of the Trails Coordination Management Committee, and a very frequent user of the Center Trail, and a neighbor of the proposed routes. I think that it is important, as Dave Paul indicated, that this be evaluated by the TCMC, and beyond that, that there be explicit, well-noticed public discussion of the proposal, both the small route proposed and, as Peter indicated, the wider concept. There is certainly time before the February 22nd deadline for further discussion and for the board to get more public input, and for the Upper Charles Trails Committee to get more public input. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Chuck. So here's what I'm going to recommend. And I guess the way I'm thinking about this is that I think that we can still show, I think without endorsing a plan or a route or any specific level of detail, I guess what I'd like to do is I'd like to see if the board would support the consideration of a trail located within the buffer zone of any property under consideration. And I guess what I'm thinking is, and Jane, I think that something like that is probably sufficient for you to say that we're supportive of it.
Yep.
And it is intentionally not endorsing, and it's very clear that it's not endorsing a particular plan.
Correct.
So I guess I'll look to the board members. You know, if we do something with language such as that we support the consideration of a trail located within the buffer zone of any property under consideration, is that something that as a board we would be comfortable with?
Yes, I think you're phrasing it very well, Gary. Thank you.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's just go ahead and take a quick sort of straw vote on this. It's not a motion. It's nothing formal like that. But you know, just I think it would help Jane to have at least you know, if the majority of the group felt this way, that you know, that's something that they could reference.
Can I, before we do a vote, can I just propose maybe a modification to that? Because I don't even think that we're even ready to vote on a buffer zone at all. But I think we need to find the terminology to encourage the grant to do more discovery on the trail system. So I'm not sure how would we work. Would that be something we could word, Gary?
You know, to be honest, I think what I stated earlier, I think works for the Upper Charles Trails Committee, and I don't think it's binding us in any way. And I personally, I hesitate on encouraging. I don't know. I want to be careful here that we're not endorsing or pushing an agenda of some kind, but more that we just stating that we are open to the consideration of a trail within the buffer zone. That's it. And to the discussions earlier, the committee is planning more public input. I think it's worth having more discussion and review with this committee, but that's not our intention tonight, and I don't want to go there. We should be
Mr. Chair,
wrapping up our meeting pretty quickly.
Can I suggest that John just type this out and present it so we're clear on the statement we're voting on? Would that be okay? And as a follow-up on that, do we want to mention something about working with provided that, you know, the neighbors are okay with it, something like that? I don't know, because we're talking specifically about the buffer zone, right?
Just the buffer zone.
Do we want to mention something like about the neighbors or not? Do you think?
My take on it, that's why we're supporting the consideration of a trail.
Okay.
There's no specifics, there's no plan, there's nothing we're referencing.
Okay.
All it's saying is that, and I think as Peter said earlier, the concept of a trail within a buffer zone he's supportive of. It's the specific properties and routing where the concern is. So let's just avoid that.
Yep. No, I'm okay with that. I was just thinking out loud. Thank you.
Okay.
Through the chair.
Go ahead, John.
just in, Dave and I were on the same page. I was actually writing something up as he was saying that. So I think the vote would be that the planning board would be in support of a statement that they are, voting in support of a statement that they are in support of a trail within the buffer zone on the school site. Is that too complicated?
That's almost
Yeah.
too specific for me.
Exactly.
Because now we're getting into supporting a plan of sorts that could impact the butters that haven't been noticed.
I think
What of the consideration of a trail?
Sorry, what was that, John?
So a statement that they are in support of the consideration of a trail within the
Of a
buffer?
trail within the buffer zone of virtually any property.
Maybe we should say any trail in any buffer zone. Just to keep it very generic. But you guys are the wordsmiths, so I'm just throwing stuff out there.
Does this matter then? If it's so vague that it could apply to anything, does it really matter?
It's saying we're open to it.
Yeah,
And
but
James' point, it
then-
depends.
Yeah, but why do it? Why do it if we're being so generic? I mean, why not wait until they come back with some more information, and we'd be more than happy to listen to it when they get more feedback.
Because the reason why, Deb, is because they are going to request engineering studies that give them more information, but doing so costs money. So here's my suggestion. We have some proposed language. We've already probably spent more time on this than we should. Let's just go back and validate with the engineers if that generic language is sufficient and helpful. And if it is, then we can vote on it at the next meeting. If it isn't, then, you know, I think realistically, we're going to want to get into more details and more discussion as to whether or not we're willing to support a specific plan. Does that make sense, Jane? I know we've got a little bit of time here, and I don't want to sort of rehash all the arguments we had tonight in 2 weeks. But if what we're proposing is so generic it doesn't do any good, then let's just make sure that works before we formalize it.
Sure.
Does that make sense, John? Okay. This is in my and I know that several of you out there can attest to this. This project, I think, is one of the hardest things to move forward in Hopkinton. It is immensely complex. There's a ton of stakeholders, and the reality of it is that even if the Upper Charles Trails Committee were to show us their plans, personally, I would bet money that before it's constructed, those plans will change. And that's just the nature of what they're working with here. So
through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to say that I think it was good discussion that we just had in the last 15 minutes, because we're getting input from different areas, right? The chairman of the Trails Committee and Chuck as well, you know, input from the planning board, input from the Upper Charles Trail Committee. So I think it was a good discussion.
Yeah. Okay. All right, let's move on. We've the last couple things we have are just excuse me, some meeting minutes. Does anybody have any comments or suggested modifications to either the July 26th or the August 9th meeting minutes?
I noticed that the minutes that were put up said the wrong date. Whether it was on the list of the agendas, it was like 2016. Was that the wrong notes, or it was in the list of the meeting notes said 2016? At least when I looked at it.
What do you mean the meeting notes?
the list of the administrative paperwork. In the list, the meeting was titled with a back date. It wasn't the current date.
In the meeting packet?
In the meeting packet, yes.
I'm looking at it now. It all says 2021.
Let me see. It was weird. I thought it was weird. I'm still on.
Through the chair.
Yes, go ahead, Stephanie.
So I did not get the August minutes in, but I did upload the planning board minutes of 7/26. Right below it, it does show planning board minutes of 8/8/2016. It looks like
That
John.
was related to the Upper Charles Trail discussion. That was the last time it was discussed. That's why that was in there. Those aren't actual minutes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I
sorry
wasn't
about
crazy. All right, that's great. Thanks for the clarification. I somehow missed the current ones then.
Okay. Any comments or proposed modifications to the July 29th, or excuse me, July 26th or August 9th meeting minutes?
The August 9th minutes were not uploaded. We'll have to do those next meeting.
Yep, okay. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes from July 26th, 2021.
So moved.
Mary Larson Marlowe, second.
Assuming no further discussion, we'll take a vote. Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane Marin, yes.
Dave?
Dave Paul, yes.
Deb? You're muted,
Deborah
Deb.
Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Shahadul?
Hayden Manan, yes.
And Gary Trindle is a yes. And I think that's it for tonight. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Rob Benson, so moved.
Deborah Feinberg, second.
And assuming no further discussion, Mary, how do you vote?
Mary Larson Marlowe, yes.
Rob?
Rob Benson, yes.
Jane?
Jane, yes.
Dave?
Dave, yes.
Deb?
Deborah Feinberg, yes.
Sundar?
Sundar Sivaraman, yes.
Shahadul?
Hayden Manan, yes.
And Gary Trindle's a yes. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Gary.
Good couple of weeks, and we'll see you on Saturday morning, September 25th, 9:30 a.m.
Bye.
Good night, all.
Thanks for keeping us on point, Gary.